logical way. That's how we do it. Why am I here? Because the organ in Yankee Stadium is now located in the Delta Suites, which is an exclusive suite area within the stadium. I'll get into the details of why later. But I'm there playing the organ for a game, and this guy walks over to me and says, of all things that I'm not expecting, do you do speaking engagements? Well, I guess so. That was Ed Dahl, who happened to be attending the game that day, and we got to talking, and here I am. So that explains that. I fielded a lot of questions just in the time before we got together here. And probably one you'll have is, how does one get the job of organist at Yankee Stadium? Well, first of all, you have to be able to play the organ on some kind of a professional level. And beyond that, then it's a simple matter of the usual elements of timing and dumb luck. And we'll get to all that in due course. Let me start out with a little history of organ in ballparks. The first organ in a stadium was in Wrigley Field in Chicago in 1941, when they brought in an electronic organ on April 26th of that year as a one-time stunt. And the fans liked it so much that it stayed. And then other cities began to pick up on it. And probably by the early 50s into the 70s, almost every Major League stadium, I'm guessing every single one, probably had live organ. Now, it's been supplanted in recent years with the improvement of sound systems and their ability to play current popular music on it, with recorded music, which we will call canned music from here on out. Right now, we're at the stage where about half the Major League stadiums have live organ. So probably 16 out of 30 that I'm aware of. And it was down to about 14, but a couple of places like Atlanta have added the organ back in recent years. And a lot of those places don't have an actual organ with two manuals and a pedal board. They'll have something like this instead. So the organ's hanging on in Major League ballparks, but it's not as prevalent as it once was, but it's still a part of the fabric of going to a ball game. So that's the history of the organ in the stadium. Now, how I came into this. As John said, I grew up playing music, and I grew up playing the organ. A lot of keyboard players you're going to run into grew up playing the piano. I grew up playing the organ because that's what we had at the house. My father played, he had an organ and an accordion. He said, which one do you want to play? I said, I'm going near that accordion, so I'll play the organ. So I was playing the organ since I was 5 years old, and we didn't even get a piano until I was about 12, so I was a pretty proficient organ player at the outset, and that's like unlike most of my colleagues who started out on the piano. So I played in all kinds of bands through school and played rock and pop bands and cover tunes, and then I got into jazz when I was in junior high school. And my mother fancied me as the next E. Power Big. She thought I was going to be a big classical church organist. So she sent me off to Westminster Choir College, where I did learn how to play church organ. And then concurrently with that, I was doing all kinds of gigs and working 5 nights a week in all kinds of bars, which I never told them about because they would have fit. So after college, I got out and I was playing in a whole bunch of different bands, and I hooked up with the Vivino brothers. I don't know if you've heard of them. If you are, anybody watch Conan O'Brien's show? So, Jimmy Vivino is now the music director and the band leader on that show, and his brother Jerry is a saxophone player in that band. And I kind of came up playing with those guys. And in conjunction, we all worked our way into the New York scene and started playing a lot of Broadway shows and started working with a lot of famous people, mostly oldies acts. And we became their sidemen and mercenary pickup bands. So we were playing with Ronnie Spector and Darlene Love and Benny King and Sissy Houston and all these people. So I had a pretty diverse musical career going on at that point. Then this guy calls me up, a keyboard player, a friend of mine, who I really didn't know very well because keyboard players rarely cross paths. And this guy called me up and said, hey, I just got this job with Casio. So you know the company, you might be wearing one of their watches. And they were just starting to make electronic keyboards at that time. It's the early 80s. He said, yeah, I'm working here, it's a 9-to-5 job, and I need somebody to hire and go out into like Macy's and service merchandise in these department stores and just do keyboard demos and stuff. Yeah, I'm looking for any work I can get right now. So I did that for a couple of years. And then they said, hey, we like you, we want you to come work for us full time. We have a position on staff. Now, I'm leading the musician's life at this point where you kind of go to bed at 4 in the morning and wake up at 1 in the afternoon. It's like, I'm gonna have a 9-to-5 job now. I'm like, I don't know if I can do this. Let me try it, probably last a couple of months. And I was there for 15 years. And I became kind of the resident Casio product guru and marketing guy. And I was going over to Japan 3 times a year and having input into the design of these keyboards. So a lot of times, if you activate these automatic rhythms and things, I have these one-finger chords. Well, somebody has to program those, and that somebody turned out to be me. So there's proof that life can take you in strange directions you never thought was going to occur. And so a lot of times you press the demo button on these keyboards, and this song will come roaring out of it. So this is a song that I wrote and programmed for them, and then I went over to Japan and made sure they put it in there the right way. So if you're a freelance musician, you just wind up doing whatever comes your way and saying, yo, okay, I can do that, and then you have to learn how to do it, and then somehow execute it. So I wound up playing Broadway shows. I was on Hairspray for quite some time. Did any of you see Hairspray while it was on Broadway? It ran for 6.5 years. I think it's up there in the top 10 list of longest running shows. So I became the go-to sub for the second keyboard player, who was also the assistant conductor. So either when the conductor was out or he was out, I had a pretty good chance of subbing in there. So I wound up playing that show. I should have counted how many times I didn't. I'm guessing in the vicinity of 700 times. I must have played that show. I wound up conducting it for a while. And then as moving forward, I wound up as a music director on a couple of off-Broadway shows, the significant one being a show called Dream a Little Dream, which was the story of the Mamas and Papas. You've all heard of them, I guess. And it was a one-man show that featured the lead singer of that group, who was a guy named Denny Doherty, who was obviously Mama Cass was the main female voice in the group. Denny Doherty was the guy that sang all those leads on California Dreamin', Monday, Monday, and all those songs. So I spent a wonderful summer in 2003 hanging out on Bleecker Street with all these psychedelic trappings, with Denny Doherty playing Mamas and Papas tunes, which was the blast. Now the producer of that show was a fellow named Eric Niederlander. The Niederlanders are not only big Broadway moguls as a family, but they're also minority owners of the New York Yankees. Now I'm going to come back and tie this all together. After the 2003 season, a fellow named Eddie Layton had been the organist at Yankee Stadium for the previous 37 years. He started there in 1967. It became public knowledge that Layton was going to step down after the 2003 season for health reasons, because he was getting up there in age. And my wife, who is my biggest fan and will go places promotionally for me that I would never go, I'm fairly shy about that. My wife is all, oh, you've been dreaming of like playing at Yankee Stadium for 1,000,000 years. Why don't you go after this job? First of all, they probably have somebody already. Even if they don't, they probably have 500 people lined up for it. I have no connections at Yankee Stadium. How am I going to get this? There's not a chance it's going to happen, and I'm not going to beat my head against the wall trying. She's saying, well, Eric Niederlander's producing the show. Why don't you go to him and see if he knows anybody there? Okay. So I go talk to Eric Niederlander. He says, well, I'll give you the name of this person that's the head of marketing. You can contact her. I don't know what'll happen. But so I come home with this, and I tell my wife, look, I'm not going to waste my time going after this. You handle it. If you want to make this calls, beat your head against the wall. Go ahead and do it. So she calls up this woman at the stadium. This is now February of 2004. It's like a month and a half before the season's going to start. So you got to believe they're going to have a replacement for Eddie Layton by that time. She calls up, gets right through to this woman, who puts her right through to the head of scoreboard, who is doing the hiring. They don't have anybody yet, as it turns out. So the guy says to my wife, yeah, have him send a resume in. They want you to send your resume in? This is so exciting. Just send the resume out. It's not going to happen. So I send the resume, and the guy calls back a few days later and says, hey, resume looks very interesting. Why don't you come in and play for us? So by the time this happens, it's mid-March 2004. It's about 2 weeks before the season is going to start. And I go to Yankee Stadium. There's a foot of snow on the ground. It's about 20 degrees. And I get ushered to the organ booth in the old Yankee Stadium. And Eddie Layton is standing there. Like, well, whatever happens, if I don't get the gig, this is going to be cool, because I'm going to play the Yankee Stadium organ for Eddie Layton. So here's the audition. I will take you through exactly what happened. We're sitting up there wearing parkas because it's freezing out. And Eddie Layton's standing in the doorway. And he said, all right, play me a little New York, New York. All right, that's fine. Play me a little national anthem. That's fine. A little Canadian national anthem. That's fine. Take me out of the ballgame. That's fine. A little fanfare. Okay, it's enough. That was the whole audition. What was that, a minute and a half? And I'm like, that's all. I could have done so much more. So it didn't, and they said to me, you sound great, we'll let you know what happens. So I walked out of there thinking, there's no indication one way or the other this is going to happen. I'm not going to assume it's going to happen because I don't want to get disappointed again. So at least I got to play the Yankee Stadium organ for Eddie Layton, and that's cool. And a guy calls me back a few days later, and he says, listen, we have somebody we were going to give the job to, who turns out to be a guy that was the New York Islanders organist for the previous 25 years or so. And all the Yankee Stadium scoreboard guys work at Nassau Coliseum in the off-season, so they all knew this guy. He said, we would give him the job, but he can't do Saturdays and Sundays because he's an air traffic controller at Ronkonkoma Airport. And he has shifts on the weekends. Can you do Saturdays and Sundays? I said, okay. And that's how this all came about. So my first games were in April of 2004. I have been there ever since doing Saturdays and Sundays. I have subbed for the other guy who does Monday through Fridays on various weekdays. So I wind up doing about 26 to 30 games a year, something like that, not counting the playoffs. And the Yankees have, of course, been in the playoffs every year, except for 2008. How many Yankee fans do we have here? So Red Sox fans? Good. We can all coexist. Met fans, don't feel left out. Okay, that's good too. We can all coexist. Everything's all right. Red Sox got their championships. Everything's good, right? So, what do we do at the stadium? Okay, a typical day for me at Yankee Stadium is this. I am part of the scoreboard production, which is really a production. They have a control room that looks like what you see in the background of a CNN broadcast. There's just banks of high-def monitors. There's a huge video board. There's a huge audio board. There's probably a dozen guys working up there. A couple of them handle nothing but replays. There's one guy that does character generator. There's 4 or 5 cameramen out in the stands. Some are stationary, some are mobile. And a few other guys doing this and that, and me. So it's a coordinated team. The scoreboard production is the real deal. It's very tightly scripted, especially the hour before the game starts. It's scripted down to the minute. They know exactly what videos they're going to play, how long they're going to be, how I fit into that. They have an accounting of who's going to be doing announcements or presentations on the field, and it's down to the minute, and it's almost always totally precise. It rarely goes over or under. It's almost always right on the money. So before the game, we have this whole presentation. I'm called on to be there usually 2 hours before the game when the gates open, and sometimes I'll play at that point while people are coming in, sometimes not. My real duties start in that hour before. They start running video and doing some stuff out in the stands with various people, and then I get a 10 or 15 minute spot about 45 minutes before game time where I can play whatever I want. Usually I try to keep it to popular material that people are going to know, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. When you get into the modern age, it's a little difficult to pick material that's playable on the organ. You really can't play rap music on the organ. It doesn't really work. There's no melody there. But there's certain tunes that work. But I just try to play popular stuff. So there'll be some Sinatra, there'll be some classic rock, be some 60s stuff, whatever. So that's 10 or 15 minutes, and then they go into all these other presentations. Sometimes there'll be somebody that comes out to throw a first pitch, and I'll have to play a little. After they throw the pitch, I'll have to play. Something like that. Now, once the game starts, what is the role of the organist? The tops of innings. This is just at Yankee Stadium. Every stadium's different, and we'll get into a little more on that later. At Yankee Stadium, there is no music while the opposing team is batting. And that is seemingly to create this kind of stasis while there's like nothing really theatrically going on while the other team is batting. And then all the music happens in the bottom of the inning, and then things really start to percolate. So the only thing I might play in the top of an inning is this. Do you have a chain called PC Richard up here? Probably not. It's a New York, New Jersey electronics chain. All right, it's kind of a mom and pop version of Best Buy, if you will. So it's a family-owned, probably 15 or 20 store electronics chain. It's a big store. They sell electronics and appliances. They are here? Okay. They are the sponsors of Yankee pitcher strikeouts. You know, everybody and everything has to be sponsored these days. So they have sold, I guess, the rights to Yankee pitcher strikeout sponsorship to PC Richard. So when a Yankee pitcher strikes somebody out, I play. Dead serious, all right? Now we get to the bottoms of innings. This is where things start to churn because we got to pump the crowd up, all right? Yankee Stadium, in particular, is probably still 90% canned music and 10% organ. If you go to ballparks in the Midwest, say Minnesota, Milwaukee, Kansas City, Arlington, Texas, places like that, there's virtually no canned music, and it's all organ, and the organ is very apt to play in the tops of innings as well. So everybody does it differently. This being the New York area and the media capital of the world, I guess they have to get a lot of current rap and hip-hop and jock jam kind of music into the mix. So it's predominantly that. But the organ still fits in there, but on a completely directed basis. What will happen in the bottoms of innings is first batter comes up, does something, makes an out. Second batter comes up, gets a base hit. So there's a guy on, let's say there's a guy on base now. Now the next batter's up, so now we're gonna start to try to pump the crowd up. So, ball one, strike one, ball two, strike two, foul ball. Alstrom. That's the amount of notice I get. Right? I have to see that there's a foul ball and then wait for that. And Alstrom. And sometimes it won't be me. Many times it'll be the audio guy. But I'm on pins and needles kind of waiting for when the director is going to call me, and I'm on the headset, so I know when that's going to happen. All right, now, what do you play there? There's only about a dozen things that you can really do, because there's time-honored crowd pump-up things that you pretty much have to adhere to because they work, and because anything else would sound foreign in this great tradition. So really those dozen things are probably these. The big one is for the big rallies. Let's go Yankees! Which they seem to use in every ballpark, and they try to adapt the name of the team into those two syllables somehow. Let's some of the others. Let's see. The aforementioned. Could be could be could be if the Yankees are winning, it could be etc. There's a handful of others, and I know what you're thinking. How about we're not allowed to play that anymore. Want to know why? Some guy in Florida about a year and a half ago claimed a copyright in the 1980s on that piece of music and stated in a missive to MLB and to all major league teams, ASCAP has never paid me a dime for this use of my composition, and now you've got to pay me if you want to use it. Good one, huh? You know what the Yankees told them? We're not going to play it. So we haven't played it since then. We won't play that one anymore. I hear it used at some major league ballparks, but they're using it against the law, apparently. Either that or maybe they paid the guy. Now, how this guy could have written that in the 1980s is a mystery, since I remember going to games when I was a kid in the late 60s and Layton was playing it. And by all accounts, Eddie Layton was the first one to use that charge thing at a sporting event. But this guy in Florida claims to have composed the piece, so it's under copyright, so he can't play it. That's the way it goes, so that's one less bullet in my holster. But that's basically the arsenal of things that I can play in that spot when they yell, Alstrom, usually when there's a foul ball. All right, so during the bottoms of innings, we're hoping the Yankees get lots of hits and there's lots of rallies and we get to play a lot. So that's the way the first inning goes, and the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. By the sixth inning, after the opposing team bats, we are at a juncture where they run the birthdays on the board. Now, people will pay somewhere between $10 and $100 to have their happy birthday so-and-so written on the message board at Yankee Stadium, so we obviously play it. And then sometimes we'll do the Beatles version. All right, so sixth inning goes by, seventh inning. Here's where it's organ time. At the end of the top of the seventh inning, the public address announcer says, ladies and gentlemen, please rise, remove your caps, as Kate Smith sings God Bless America. And they play the old Kate Smith recording of God Bless America. Then after that, says, now we invite you all to sing along, and as Yankee Stadium organist Alstrom plays, Take Me Out to the Ball Game. charge. I used to open the window in the press box and hear 50,000 people singing along. It's pretty cool. And then the only other thing I'll do during the game is I have to play little bumpers after the third out is made. So whenever the third out is made, be it the visiting team or the Yankees, I have to play a little 10-second thing to get them off the field. Now, what do you do in 10 seconds? I quickly realized I'm a jazzer from way back, so I used to play in a lot of jazz bands. So I put together this list of Sonny Rollins and Charlie Parker and Miles Davis and Thelonious Monk songs, and I'll just play the first 8 or 16 bars of one of those as a bumper. So to get them off the field, hey, what's better than Charlie Parker? Gets them off the field, and nobody really notices what's going on there except jazzer friends of mine who happen to be at the stadium will then email me and say, hey, I heard you play some Charlie Parker. It's like, yeah, well, I got to play something there, and that might as well be it. And then the game ends, and that's pretty much how it goes. So really, I'm there for 5 or 6 hours, and I'm playing maybe a total of 30 minutes worth of music. So it's an odd kind of a gig in a lot of ways, considering the prestige that's attached to it, and to be there and playing so little music. It seems kind of weird, but it's fascinating, and it's never dull, and it's a great way to watch the games because I'm a huge baseball fan anyway, and I love being at the games, and why not? Now, where is the organ located? The organ has habitually been in the press box. So on the left field side of the press box is where you look up and see the writers. And on the right side of the press box, you'll see a whole lot of people and a whole lot of equipment. That's where the scoreboard operation is. And that's where the organ is, until this year. They made a decision to move the organ down to Delta Suites in an effort to increase recognition. They apparently did some focus groups and determined that a lot of people didn't know there was a live organ at the stadium. So their way of increasing recognition of that was to move the organ in amongst the people. Now, mercifully, they didn't put us out in the stands where everybody could get to it. So we're in Delta Suites, where the capacity is about 1,200. It's rarely completely full. And it's an exclusive, pretty posh club, right? And it's a really nice place. And there's a bar, and there's all kinds of buffets, and there's sushi, and there's an outdoor patio, and they put the organ in there. So now people come over to us while we're playing and say all manner of things. And we're on headset now trying to get instructions from the booth and trying to talk to people at the same time. But hey, do what you gotta do. And that's where the organ is. So let's open the floor. Any questions? Yes.
If you have a chance to do it, 81 gig. If you have a chance to do it full 81 gigs, would you take the whole gig?
Would I take the whole gig? I want to say yes, but I know it would be a tremendous amount of work because I have had pockets where I've subbed for the other guy for a whole week, and it's a grind. You know, it becomes, on a homestand, it would become like, 10, 11, 12 straight days of work. I would probably not turn it down if it was offered to me, no, but I'm pretty happy with the way things are because I can work in a lot of other things this way, musically, because I'm still very diverse and I like to do a whole bunch of other things, and this way I can do them.
Did they bring the organ over from the old stadium?
They did. The question was, did they bring the organ over from the old stadium? Little history on the organs at Yankee Stadium. Eddie Layton was not the first organist at Yankee Stadium, as is the common misconception. Yankee Stadium was kind of a late adopter on the organ, and they didn't incorporate one until 1965. And there was a fellow named Toby Wright, who was the first organist at Yankee Stadium. That was in 65 and 66. Layton came into the picture in 67. And the reason why is CBS, yes, that CBS, like Channel 2, bought the Yankees in 1966. And the president of CBS then was a fellow named Mike Burke. Eddie Layton, at the time, was a huge star in the pop organ world in the late 50s. And then it had tailed off a little bit, and he scored a gig playing on soap operas. So maybe you remember this. In the early 60s, there was a big-time soap opera called The Secret Storm, and it had live organ on it, and that was Eddie Layton playing the organ. So Mike Burke knew Eddie Layton from The Secret Storm and other soap operas he might have played on CBS, and said, hey, we have the Yankees now. You want to come play the organ at baseball games? Now, Layton knew nothing about baseball, and his famous quote was, I thought a sacrifice fly was an insect. So he knew that little about baseball. But he took the gig and developed into a baseball fan and was there for 37 years. Now Layton was a Hammond endorsee. He traveled the world demonstrating and doing concerts on Hammond organs. So you have to believe there was Hammonds there from the very beginning. The one I originally started playing in 2004 was an organ that they brought in there in 1983. That was a Hammond later model with the spanking new solid state technology, which I'm sure you may have heard of. And it wasn't like a real old-time Hammond with the tone generators, but it was a simulated solid state version. And by 2004, that organ got very wheezy, and they were unable to get parts for it. It was a model that was only made for 1 year, and certain things started to go wrong, and they couldn't get parts. So about 2006, they bought a brand new Hammond, and then when they transitioned to the new stadium in 2009, they brought that one over, and that's the one that's there now. It's a Hammond Elegante. Anything else? Yeah.
What's been your favorite or best game you've been to where you played the organ?
Best game? I honestly can't pick one out. I would say the playoff game against the Twins in '09 where Teixeira ended it with the home run off the top of the wall that nobody knew was a home run. That was the one I played that was probably the most exciting. The one I was at that was most exciting was a game that the other guy was playing, and I had a wonderful seat next to the right field foul pole in the front row for the final game of the 2009 World Series. Games I've played, there have been a lot of great games because they're in the playoffs all the time and they win a lot, so I have a hard time. I can tell you one wacky one that happened. I was playing this game once, and in center field there's a door that opens as part of the fence where they keep the grounds crew equipment, so all the tractors and such are back there. And right in the middle of the game, like during an inning, this door flew open. And it's like, so half of the fence was like on the field. And they had to stop the game, and I hear, Alstrom, play something. What do you play for that? I got a bolt of lightning, and I started playing. I don't know how it came to me. I thank God that it did. That's a Doors tune called Break On Through to the Other Side. So it had double meaning. And I'm glad it came, because I had no idea what I was going to do then. And then the gods came down and said, okay, play that. So there's been lots of great moments. Yeah.
Play songs at 10 minutes or 10-second increments. Do you have any songs that you like that are long songs or jazz songs?
Particular songs?
Yeah, I mean, instead of playing the regular songs, say you're in a band, right?
You mean like before the game?
When you're not working.
Oh, when I'm not working. I can't pick out favorite songs or favorite artists because I just have too many things that I'm into to like get too devoted to one thing. Like I'd sit here now and tell you that like I love James Brown or something like that, and then 2 weeks later I could be into a kick where I'm listening to all classical music or something like that. So I'm all over the map with that. I have a blues gig tomorrow night in a park down in New Jersey, and then I have a jazz gig over the weekend, and I have the church I play at and the temple I play at. So I'm so diverse that I'm not locked into any one thing, which is kind of a blessing and a curse. I sometimes wish I were narrower in focus so I would be better at particular things, but I'm just kind of a jack of all trades and do all kinds of different gigs and things. So I can't really tell you there's a favorite anything.
Just hoping you play a song.
I'm sorry?
Just looking to get you to play a song.
Oh, you're trying to get me to play a song? Oh, okay. I can do that. Well, I'll tell you what. Let me play this song that you will undoubtedly know. That happens to be a song that I play regularly at the stadium. In fact, I play it every game as part of my pregame spot, and I do it as the first song in the pregame spot. Why? Because Eddie Layton always did it as the first song in the pregame spot. And if you've ever left the stadium, you know it very well because they play it on an endless loop as people are leaving the stadium. So. Thank you. And that's how we do it, Ogden. Do I have some time here? Do I have a little more time? All right. How many of you know the name Bob Shepard? Bob Shepard, I have to talk about him a little bit because he was a real source of joy to me at the stadium. Bob Shepard was the public address announcer at Yankee Stadium from 1951 through about 2007. So that's 56 years in the same job. Bob Shepard's first season in 1951 was Joe DiMaggio's final season and Mickey Mantle's first season, and they were both in the lineup opening day of that year. DiMaggio in center and Mantle in right. By the time I arrived at the stadium, Bob Shepard, who is an extremely dignified and intelligent and wonderful man, greeted me like I was a friend from the beginning, and we became really good friends. In the old stadium, he was here, I was here, there was just a plexiglass wall between us, so we had adjoining booths. And he would frequently knock on my door and come over and just yak during the game, even. As a matter of fact, the first thing he said to me when I came in, I first met him on opening day. Mr. Shepard, everybody called him Mr. Shepard. Mr. Shepard, this is our new organist at Alstrom. He shook my hand and said, "Welcome to Yankee Stadium." I was like, wow, that's enough right there. It's cool. And we started talking about all kinds of things, rarely baseball. He didn't really want to talk about baseball that much. He wanted to talk about music of the 40s most of the time, and the great big band singers and the great composers, Rodgers and Hart and Cole Porter and all that stuff. He liked to talk to me about that. And he would call me in during a game. He'd like, knock on the window, and the game is going on. And he would have this pedal on the floor that he would step on to activate the public address system out to the house. So he would have his foot off the pedal and he'd go, "Do you know, I was listening to the radio and I heard a song by the great singer Joe Stafford. Do you know of Joe Stafford?" "Shortstop Derek Jeter." "And I heard Joe Stafford singing on the radio. Oh, it was magnificent. She was singing a song called It Never Entered My Mind, written by Rodgers and Hart. Do you know that song?" First baseman Tino Martinez. In the same tone of voice, all right, the voice of God that you heard at Yankee Stadium was Shepard talking in his regular voice. He didn't put on any special voice to talk over the PA. He would just transition just like that. So one time he comes up to me. Now, many of you Yankee fans will remember an incident. It was probably in 2004, 2005. We had a pitcher named Kevin Brown, and he had a particularly bad outing, went into the clubhouse, and punched a cement wall and broke his hand. Remember that? Sure you do. So I'm in that weekend. Shep comes over. I never called him Shep. I just called him Mr. Shepard. Knocks on my door. He comes in and he says, "You know, I've written a poem. Would you like to see it?" I said, "Of course." So he hands me this little piece of paper, and it's on a pad that says, "From the desk of Bob Shepard," and it has a Yankee logo on it, and it's handwritten, and it reads like this: "Oh, Kevin Brown let his team down when he fractured his hand on the wall. Better instead, he had fractured his head, then it wouldn't have mattered at all." Like, can you imagine, like, Bob Shepard asking you if you want to read this and then handing it to you and then reading it? Like, what are you? I was like, this is amazing. This is really great. I said, you must have more of these. He's, "Oh, hundreds." I said, "You need to get these published, my friend. I mean, you make $1 million if you publish your collected works like this." "Oh no, Mr. Steinbrenner would fire me." So I had that kind of a relationship where we just have casual chats like that. But the crowning moment, and I'll wrap things up with this little story. It's Military Day at Yankee Stadium. They always have this on a Saturday in June. And it's a big deal. They have big military ceremonies which are featured with, or highlighted with, the Golden Knights parachuting into the stadium, and a big ceremony like that. So it's a 4 o'clock game on this Saturday, and they're going to do the military ceremony at 3 o'clock. So I'm sitting at the organ, and it's about 5 minutes to 3, and I look over in Shep's booth, and he's not there. I say, "Oh, he's downstairs eating, hanging out, whatever." Gets to be about 2:59, and I look over there, and he's still not there. Now the director by this time is like, "All right, we got 1 minute till Shepard. Is he there?" And he looks at me and he's not there. Now it's like 15 seconds before the spot is supposed to be read. And it's like a page and a half spot, like a big deal, introducing the whole military day thing. So it's like 15 seconds before it's going to happen. The director comes over. Where's Shepard? I don't know. And in a fit of madness or whatever, I went, and he said, yeah, go. So I go into Shepard's booth. I sit down in front of his microphone and his little pedal, and I'm speed reading this page and a half script. And I'm here, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I step on the pedal. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Yankee Stadium. Now, my life is flashing before my eyes because I don't know if I should be imitating Shepard, if it's sacrilege, or if I don't do it, it's going to be very conspicuous that he's not there. So I can't decide exactly what I'm going to do, so I veered a course right in the middle. This is a page and a half, all right? It was like a 2-minute read. About 2/3 of the way into it, I subconsciously hear the door open. And I'm just praying I get through this without botching anything up, or without letting the accents slide. I'm trying to keep it consistent, and you can imagine what I'm going through here. So I finish the read, I take my foot off the pedal, I turn around, and Shepard's standing in the doorway. So I feel like a bad school child about to be scolded. And he looks me in the eye and he says, "Were you trying to imitate me?" We had a good laugh. So, unless you have any more questions, that's probably, well, I mean, I could go on, but we probably all want to eat. So, anything else? I'll be around if you have any other questions. It's been a lot of fun talking to you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks a lot.
Still on? Yeah, well, as a club, we got a couple of things